So, Marky, it's just me and you back in Studio A.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So, no Charlie for the next couple of episodes. He's travelling, I don't know what he's doing.
He's the new Judith Chalmers, isn't he? Wish he was here.
Yeah, wish he was here, yeah. Wish he was here. Lastminute.com, as usual with Charlie. He's gone away. I don't know where he's got. I think he's a mate's stag do or something like that.
Are we going to give him some stick over this?
Barcelona. Yeah, I think it's really, he should tell his mate to change the wedding or, change it around really. You know what I mean? Just if there's a podcast involved, but it's kept us off air because of holidays and change of business, because obviously we've all moved around, got rid of a business, got another one, and Charlie's moved, doing bits and pieces. So we've kind of been out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. But
we're back in Studio A, as you can see, just me and you. So I'll start with it, Mark. Let's just get straight into it. What's doing your head in?
Do you know what's doing my head in this week, right? I bet this is you and a lot of other people. When you go to a website, and I get why they do it because it's all this GDPR and that, but when you go to a website, you get, especially if you're reading the news, you get the flash of the website up and you go, oh yeah, that's the article I want to read. And then the next thing is it goes, do you accept this and consent to that and all the rest of it? And it's like every website. And if you're searching for something, like let's say I want a spray bar for a Bowser, right? And you go on Google, I'm looking for a spray bar for Bowsers. And you get all them results that come up and you go, oh. And let's be honest, because of the sponsored results and everything else, I'll probably have to do about 20 clicks before I find something resembling what I'm actually looking for. So I'll click each website, consent, accept. No, that's not what I want. Next one, consent, accept. No, that's not what I want. And that is actually doing me, Mark.
Don't you read the new part of Google has got the AI in it at the top, and it hopefully breaks down what you're really looking for.
Yeah, I do read a bit of that, but sometimes I want the website because I want to contact the company, I want to ring them, I want the phone number, but it's actually doing me in because I've realised now every website you go on, it comes up. And I know why we've got to have it because of GDPR, but surely, right, there's got to be a better way of doing it.
I don't know. Because Google itself asks you every time. And I thought when it first came out, it was going to ask you that you accepted and that was it. It would remember that you'd asked it and it wouldn't come up again. But it does. It comes up with everything. I agree with you.
But you wouldn't. It's like, so here's an analogy, right? If you walked into Tesco's, right, because you was hungry and you want a sandwich, and some geezer just jumped out in front of you with a big bowl and, whoa, do you consent to our T's and C's and all the rest of it? And I want a sandwich,
before you buy
mate.
a sandwich.
Yeah, I can see the sandwich. I've had a little flash of it over there before you put the big bowl in front of me. Yeah, but you can't go any further until you consent. And I go, all right, then, mate, I consent. And he just walks off casually like that. Oh, now I can have my... Do you see what I'm saying? I find it quite intrusive, Mark. And it's really doing my head in.
It does, like these little things though. They're just little things that turn you over the edge, don't it? Just these little things.
It's the nick because they happen over and over again. Because you go on one website, then another, and it's like I just want to get on with what I'm doing. I don't want to consent to everything. Before I know, at the end of any working day, I've consented to 20 websites. And if you add up the time, that's probably like
20 seconds. I think that's it. You know what's done my head in? It done my head, right? So I've borrowed my son's car, right? Because I've had a few things going on with my car. So I borrowed his car. Not only the kids, they don't look after their cars, do they? Yeah, look after their stuff. But I've got a bit of a tech issue. And I find this with certain cars. In actual fact, it's more in a BMW because that's what it is, he drives, than any other car. Is trying to, when you link your phone to the car with a Bluetooth, every time you come in and start the car again, it don't remember me. So if I'm on Spotify, it does remember me, but it don't go back to where I was in Spotify.
Oh, you got to go and select it, like?
Yeah, you got to go in and select it. But what it does remember, it's pulled a song out of my playlist on Apple, which I don't even have Apple anymore, that I didn't even know what was there, was on some fucking random album, and it plays the same song, Achy Breaky Fucking Heart. Every time I go in there, Achy Breaky Heart. I've even found myself, do you know what's done me head in? I've even, after like what is this? Every time and trying to find it, because you forget and you just jump in a car, I've even started sounding like tapping my foot to it, Mark, you know? I've listened to the first couple of verses, you know what I mean, before I've realised I'm listening to it.
You realise that by the next podcast, you are going to know the song fluently.
I know everything, won't I?
I bet you'll be great at karaoke.
Billy Ray Cyrus, we're going to be like that.
That's it.
You
You'll be at the karaoke. Next time we got a gig on, I'm going to go, Mark will do it. Mark will sing
But with all the technology today, why can't it just find what was on and start playing?
I don't know. I think tech's got uber too complicated now, isn't it?
It has. You just want to, well, you think it has, but I don't think cars have all automatically followed suit. You've got to still sync everything up, and you don't remember it sometimes, and you lose it, and then sometimes ain't got the sound. You've got to turn the car off and turn the car back on again.
I just got visions. So that's amused me. It's made my day, actually. I got visions of you, cruising along with the windows down with aching breaking
heart.
Yeah.
I even started getting out of the car now, doing a bit of a line dance, before I get in the shop.
I see you got the brown shoes. And there'll be boots soon.
We'll have a set of cowboy boots or something like that. It's got to be one of the worst tracks ever, isn't it?
I'll be honest with you, it ain't my cup of tea. I
don't even know where it's come from, because I can only see that when I look at it, it's on an album that like a Nashville country album that I've bought, and it might have been on there, from Apple.
Are you trying to blag that off now?
I think so. It's either that or I download it specially.
Yeah, either that, or there is another option. Someone's having a wind up. Your son's having a wind up, and you thought, what is a song that just don't suit my dad? Right.
Maybe it's saved on the thing. Is that what you're saying? Saved actually on the
He's put
car.
Play every time he drives off. Achy breaky heart.
Unbelievable. Anyway, that's it's not major, but it did get to me Swede a little bit when I was driving up here, Mark. I must admit, it did get me goat for the final time, and I think this really stressing me out. Not as bad as me coffee, which, by the way, I went into a normal cafe just to give everyone an update, because everyone seemed to like that rant I had about the coffee, and in agreement, with the fact that it's a grande or a venti.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lovely coffee. Caf the other day. Well, I was with you, wasn't I, Mark?
Yeah.
Lovely caf. We met up in somewhere in London. Where was we? Bayswater?
But we got proper done over there, didn't we? Because...
No, but before you say where we got done over, it was a straight, what are you having? Tea or coffee? That's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There wasn't a grande or a venti. There wasn't a flapper lacquer, whatever. It was just a coffee white, coffee black, tea white, tea black.
What it says on the tin. And what?
Can I have an Earl Grey tea? No, you can't.
And you don't even know your name.
Just don't. No, don't care.
Because they want the name now, don't they?
They don't want the name. Yeah. So what do you mean we got done over? What?
Well, we got done over because we've had our lovely coffees. We've eaten our lovely breakfast, egg, bacon, sausage, chips, beans, right? And then...
Don't be saying that on air, because somebody who's been listening to this knows that I'm meant to be on a healthy diet.
I got up to pay, got the old debit card out, you know what I mean? I'm a bit old school nowadays. They're watches and phones, and one day it'll be your shoe, wouldn't it? But I've gone to pay. She went, cash only.
Oh, yeah, that was it, yeah.
Yeah, we got done over.
He was lucky. I had one last bit of cash.
I had a £10 note, and you had a bit of cash. I managed to cover that, but there was no chance of our mate paying for it, was there?
No. All surprisingly, don't carry cash. I haven't carried cash since 1992, he said, or something like that.
Yeah, so we don't carry debit card either.
The customer weren't like buying, that's for sure. Anyway, so today I thought we'd have a chat about sales, because we had a conversation. Someone wrote in and said, look, I'm in a sales role, just starting out. Fair play. They've gone from being a chef. Yeah, 16 years as your chef, and they're now been in sales for a little bit of time. So they've got the bug of it. Anyone can do sales. Not everyone can do sales, but people are adaptable from other industries, and they've come into it. So I thought we could, as you're the sales guru on the podcast, we could probably go through a couple of bits and pieces. I've written down a few bits and pieces in that. Maybe we could help out and just ask. But I think the first thing I want to start, and I don't want to go on about COVID, because COVID's gone and busted, but we did see a big change, didn't we? We got in attitude with meetings and bits and pieces. What do you think's changed for you since COVID in meeting and greeting and taking customers out? Has there been a change? Have you seen much? Let's start with that.
Yeah, there has been. I think it's there's been quite a big shift. So if we go back to pre-COVID, you could visit offices, you could visit sites, you could, if you didn't know the customer and you were canvassing, if you like, I could see something over here, Mark's Construction Limited, and I could pop in and say, hello mate, do you use machines, blah blah blah, can I leave a card, all that good stuff, right? And but now it feels like it's frowned upon. Because of course, during the COVID, people didn't want you going into their offices because there were protocols, wasn't there, to work apart. The other situation is there is still a lot of people working from home. People do 2 days at home, 3 in the office. It seems to have become a thing. People hot desk now. So the pre-COVID, the guy I used to deal with used to sit right there in the corner, and I could go in or make an appointment, go and see him. Now he's a hot desk. He could be anywhere, right? Yeah. So what I've found
harder to build a relationship.
It's harder to. You can't get round as easy as you used to. I knew that I could go there and see Bob, go there and see Dave, go there and see John. The reality is now, Dave might be working from home on Wednesdays, but Bob works from home on Tuesdays, and someone else works from home on Thursdays. So it's a lot more scheduled now.
Yeah, trying to get everyone round in one, like going to London and get 3 or 4 visits in, like I did the other day, is really hard, isn't it?
It's hard now, yeah. It's a lot more scheduled. You have to. You can still cold call sites. You can still go in because sites are open, they're operating, but offices have changed they've changed their stance a little bit.
So, how's the face-to-face? If the face-to-face meetings have changed, how do you build that relationship? And how are you building that trust and without them?
It's a lot more challenging because if we go back to, say, pre-email, I could see you, we could cut a deal, you could tell me some of your pains, I could tell you some of my services, we could see if there's a match and try and see if we can do some business together. But now there's a lot more people behind an email wall, yeah? So you're not really sure who you're dealing with. You might email me and ask me for a price, and I can give you that price, but it's difficult to justify the other offerings that might have the value, the added value and stuff like that.
People are less likely to change the way to a new supplier because they don't meet people anymore. They're not doing anything.
It is challenging like that. It's becoming, even as you've just hit the nail on the head, it is very difficult to persuade someone to change supplier because nobody wants to read an email like that. But that's what I've got to tell you. But if I'm not meeting you and we're not face to face, how can I tell you that? And I know that if I put it in email, you're not going to read it.
Cool. Well, let's go back a bit. We talked about the guy that's written in and asked about some, while we're talking today, while we're taking out as a bit of a extra episode to talk about this. But where did you start, Mark? Give us your background. Where did you start? Why did I call you the guru? I mean, we've worked together over the years as well in different firms. You're well-established face in the equipment rental market. People know who you are. You work for some of the biggest firms. So how did you get into there? Why? Was it by luck or?
No. So really strangely, I started with A Plant, now Sunbelt Rentals.
Was that in sales straight away? Or was you driving
No, I was on the hire desk. Okay. Done a little bit of driving for them as well. They put me through the Claire testing course, and I used to do the run and test out the back, do a bit of sweeping, messing about, changing pull cords, all that. So I used to be a little bit in the office, a little bit in the workshop as needed. And then I was more, they called it hire negotiator. And then I became a full-time hire negotiator, then a senior hire negotiator. And then after a few years, I went out on the road. I was out on the road at 21. Okay. So I was selling at 21 for A Plant, and then a couple of years later, I became a manager for them. Then I changed. I fancied a change. I moved over to another company gone now called Anvil Plant and Tool Hire.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I was a manager for those guys at Crayford for a few years. Then I went into the generator industry, out on the road as sales again. Then the MD at the time wanted me to move into a manager role. So I managed the Enfield depot. And then from there, I went into the bigger plant, the market I'm in now, operating self-drive plant, tippers, grabs, high-abs, haulage. So yeah, I've moved from basically tool hire to generators to big plant.
So going back to when you was 21 then, that must have been a different industry then. What's changed, do you think? What's the biggest change you've seen? Or what was different back then? What could you get away with, maybe?
Well, do you know what? There's been a lot of changes. You know, if you look at the way the market's evolved now, so back then ordering was done on site. Having only the very, very big companies had procurement managers or a procurement team. You could go on site, the guy would have his carbon copy, you could cut a deal on a 6-ton dumper and he'd write you out the order there and then give you the carbon copy, and you'd be racing back to the, you know, you had no signal back then, because you just go back to the depot, give him the carbon copy and say, oh, Mark wants a 6-ton dumper and now, you know what I mean? But I found at that time we were really busy, crazy busy, because you know, Millennium was coming up. There was all that kind of stuff. BT at the time were putting in ISDN, and fibre was just coming out. Yeah. There was a lot of work on the gas, and there was a lot of work on the electric.
But do you also think that was because there was less, not competition, but less different options, or with A Plant being such a big player at the time?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I suppose if we're talking specifically about A Plant at that particular time, so I'm talking about the late 90s, it was A Plant or Speedy. There were only really two options. Brandon came in some years later, followed by Gap, and some of the others. Selwood at one point got into Plant, didn't they? But back then, in those days, it was the two brands were A Plant or Speedy.
Yeah. And then the others came, Gap came from north to south. And
Brandon's come from Bristol, didn't they?
So because of that then, what you're saying there, do you think sales is now more about relationship still or value?
It's about both. The relationship side, as we've discussed earlier, is very challenging because technology gets in the way of sometimes the face-to-face meetings. But it is about both. You need to be able to add value, and you almost need to be able to prove that. If you can't add value, then you're solely relying on you're dealing with a customer on a price basis only. Yeah. But yeah, relationships are really important, because if I understand your project, for example, if I understand your project, if I understand what your pains are, what are the troubles you have? Is it invoicing? Is it getting a consolidated invoice? Is it the quality of the kit? Is it the lateness of the deliveries? What are your pains, and what's the value? What's the value that I can add to your project? How can I take some of that pain away? Is what I'm offering going to solve some of your challenges? And it's both. It's both. It's value and relationships.
So before I get on to about how hard it is to get in front of these decision makers at the moment, you know, do you feel then that, because I've kind of noticed this a little bit within rental, do you feel that the operational side of some businesses hasn't caught up with the way that the face-to-face customer interaction is in business now? So what I mean by that is sales is being predominantly led, and we'll get onto a bit of AI at the later. It's getting more and more AI driven, like cold call type of tactic. Face-to-face meetings are becoming more electronic and maybe not as important if you've got supplier agreements in place. Emails are easy enough. But do you think the operations and the backup of companies have changed much to be able to adapt to that kind of way of thinking?
I think
in a way that you deal with a breakdown now, and
I think the process and the procedure is much the same. I think there is now a lot of software available which allows you to manage your fleet and your assets. Yeah. But I think it's down to the individual companies to utilise that software properly. And I think we spoke about it on a previous podcast. I can come to you and sell you all this software that's going to manage your assets and all the rest of it. But if you don't use it properly and you don't manage it properly, you're not getting the value from it. And I think you're right. I think the construction industry is probably behind in some way, I'd say probably behind 10 to 15 years in technology compared to other industries. Yeah. And I'll give you an analogy or an example. If you look at how quickly Uber, for example, came on the market and how quickly Just Eat and all the rest of it, you're able to order your fish and chips with vinegar but no sauce and all the rest of it and get it delivered. So we're talking about a process, we're talking about an ordering system, and we're talking about logistics, much the same as we have in construction.
Yeah.
So could that software and could that process be transferred to construction?
I think people have tried that, haven't they? And I think that the online ordering and stuff like that has tried. There's a lot of trust with getting that drill back. I suppose the only real difference, my counter argument to that at the moment, and I'm sure there's a solution out there, would be that when I've delivered you a burger, I ain't got to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. As long as it's cooked and it tastes all right, I'm going to eat it. And that's the next time you'll hear from me is when I order another one.
So for the general public, it'd be harder to do that way for the trust element. But for big account customers, I'm sure there's online catalogues and bits and pieces like that you can order from, I suppose, now without interacting. I think that's the shame thing I've noticed in there. And I'm just going to ask you a question in a minute about, but the generation that seems to be coming through, they don't seem that bothered about face-to-face meeting with people. They don't seem to want to do what we used to do, go out, enjoy networking and bits and pieces like that. The networking groups I go to are pretty much my age group. Yeah. There's not many younger people there. Sorry about drinking the water in front of you there, but
I think you're right.
55 degrees outside at the moment.
It's crazy heat at the moment.
There is other water alternatives available apart from what we're drinking.
I think you're right. I think but I think we have to consider that the younger generation has been brought up with phones, of which they don't use the voice calls so much. They use Snapchat and WhatsApp and God knows whatever else. Yeah. And you've only got to drive past a bus stop with the youth coming to or from school, and they're all individually on their phones tapping away. So my fear is that generation has lost that face-to-face chat, that banter, that kind of I'll tell you what is a skill, right? And this is what I fear they've lost, and it might answer your question a little bit. Initializing a conversation from nothing is a skill, right?
100%.
Now, I remember, and they were brilliant at training, by the way. So when I was at college, I believe it or not, I worked for Dixon's for a little while. And they are one of the, at the time, I haven't worked for them for many years, obviously, but at the time, they're one of the best employers. And if I was to rewind my time, I would still work there because the fundamental training that I was given there was phenomenal. And they even trained you into initializing a conversation.
Yeah.
Right? There were 3 ways to initialize a conversation. One might be a general approach. Oh, look at that weather out there. It's hot and sunny, right? One might be a product approach. Oh, I see you looking at the video player. Shows my age now, right? And there are other Betamax. Yeah, that is really old. Yeah. So my point is this: if the youth are growing up and they're just on text and they're on emails, they're on Snapchat and all the rest of it. I remember standing at a bus stop, pissing down with rain, so you'd be huddling under the thing, and there'd be a guy there much older than me on his way to work. I'm on my way to school, and you could have the crack, you could have the banter. You knew how to initialise a conversation. Because you were kind of taught it without being taught it, because everyone used to do it. Like he might just turn around to me and go, "Oh my God, look at this rain," and I'd go, "Oh, I know, it's unbelievable, mate. How far have you had to walk? You look soaked," you know, and. But now I can imagine now if you was to replay that scenario now, you'd have people all huddling under the bus,
their phones,
texting their mates. Yeah. So
or texting the person next to them.
Yeah. So that's why and this is a question for you then. Are young people not going to networking events? Are young people not ringing customers? Because they actually don't know how to initialise a conversation.
It is true. I mean, your point the other day was me. I was at a construction line event, and you're queuing up to see a couple of, so meet the buyer type of thing. So you're queuing up, Are we going to stand there and twiddle your thumbs or play a game of whatever on your thing? And that was it. I had 3 or 4 conversations in the queue just talking to people. One of them turns out to be a guy that had used the product and hadn't used it for a while because he hadn't had the job to do that and just got an order out of him.
Yeah.
So,
but that's how you meet people, isn't it?
Talking to him and having the crack. And by the way, he's coming on the pod, which is nice as well.
Oh, there you go.
Talk about something else.
I look forward to that.
It was a double whammy. But look, there's a big problem with communication with young thing. I mean, to the point, without being too political, but I actually agree with it. This smartphone, ridiculous notion of smartphone, your children having phones to go to school with. Like, we never had a phone to go to school with. And parents, for some reason, need to contact their kids in an emergency. And they're the ones who are pushing this rather than standing with the schools and saying, look, if I need to contact you, I'll contact you at lunchtime, you can have your phone. Or I'll contact you after school. But between the time of going to school and leaving school, my mum, if it was an emergency, for example, the moon was about to hit the floor, then she would have rung the school, wouldn't she?
Or come up the school.
Or come up the school, it was that important. Yeah. But this generation of mothers and fathers, just to think that giving a 9-year-old kid an iPhone 16 is like the thing to do. And the schools see it as a problem. I think you should, so I think in Australia, forgive me, it might be Australia or New Zealand, they're talking about banning social media and it's going through the parliament at the moment for anyone under a certain age. I agree with that. Get them out talking. My youngest, I remember looking in her bedroom when she was walked past her bedroom, the door was open. She sat at her desk on her laptop playing a game, and on her iPad was about 9 of her friends all doing the same thing. I remember I've got a really good picture of a football tournament that we played at Barnet Football Club, and the Barnet youth team were there at the time when they had a youth team. They were there, and it's really funny. There was 4 settees, big settees in a square, and each one of those players that was set down was on their phone. Not one of them was talking. Now they're in a team sport, for Christ's sake. So yeah, that's a real problem there. We need to get back to basics on communication. But answering me man's question, give him a bit of advice. Let's go on and get to a bit of advice. So if it's harder to get in front of people now, what are the tactics? What tactics can you offer? How is it different? What would you do? What do you do different, or do you do anything different? And move on with that to say that if cold calling and emailing still exist, are they still effective?
They are. Okay, so. It's a really good question, actually. Right. So fundamentally, if you want to work with somebody, do business, trade, and you want to have a conversation with them, the best thing to do, and I do it, if there's a company I've identified that I want to trade with, the best thing to do is just be open, honest and polite. I ring up the company and I say, my name's so-and-so, I work for so-and-so, and I offer some services that includes, don't bother listing it off because it's probably a receptionist, yeah. I do plant hire and haulage, yeah. Could I grab the name of the buyer that might be responsible for procuring those services, right? And then she'll say, oh yeah, that she might say, I can't put calls through, because you could ask, could I speak to that guy or lady? And they might say, yeah, they don't take calls, but I'll give you an email. Get the email address. Pop an email, but I'll give everybody out there one bit of advice. Don't send that. If you're going to email somebody that you've never spoke to before, the best thing you could do is just keep it short and sweet. 2 sentences, 1 paragraph, real short. Just say, because don't forget, once you're in front of them, you can explain more, right? So if I was emailing you and I didn't know you, Mark, I'd say, hi, Mark, hope you're well. I wonder if I could catch up with you sometime. I offer these services, and I wondered if it's possible to make an appointment to come and see you.
It's like one of those LinkedIn posts you get, messages, or people post now as if they're a little bit of a sales thing. It's like that long, isn't it? It's like they message you with about 2 pages, and you're like, I'm bored of what you're talking about, mate. It's kind of an American thing as well. That, when you click on the video and to buy something in like anything, if you've ever been like with now that we're exposed to American businesses more on social media, you click on something and you've got to go through a 300-hour video to find out what you're actually going to be getting
and how much it costs.
Yeah, like, just ridiculous. But yeah, carry on. Sorry.
But the key to it is this: treat people as people. And not as bots. So if you send them emails like that, no one's going to read them. But if I send you an email and say, "Hi Mark, hope you're well. I offer operating a self-drive plant and haulage. I've seen a couple of your sites, and I really think I might be able to help with some services. Is it possible I could catch up with you for a chat?" There you go. Right. I've treated you as a person. I'm not going to waste your time doing 400 lines of, because what they're doing is they're just copying these people that send those things that you just said there. They're copying and pasted and they're sending them to 100 people. Yeah. Now, how does that make you as a buyer individually feel special, or how have I tailored my services to meet your individual needs? I don't know. By sending emails like that, there's sporadic emails that don't mean anything, and there's probably one sentence that might apply to you, but you've got to read the whole lot to find it, and you're not going to. That's the reality.
So how many times do you follow up? What advice for follow up? So you've emailed me, we tried to contact. I've not got back to you, like I probably wouldn't. I do know the stat behind this, by the way. I know for any young salesperson losing heart, that the stat is that the average for new customers, not existing customers, but for a new time buyer, you normally have to touch base with them around about 12 times. And this stat came out a while ago, and it takes, so when you're thinking, well, I've made that initial approach, then I've made an email, you might have met them in the pub, blah, 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 blah. Obviously that can come down, but it's not unrealistically to touch base before you get an order, being that the order might be the 12th time you've touched base with that customer. It's taken that long to get through.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I had an account join us last week, 2 weeks ago. And I'm not going to lie to you, I've been talking to that company on and off for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a good account, and they spend good money on our services. And but this is the thing: the days of high pressure selling are gone. Right? It needs to be. If I'm to trade with you, it needs to be your idea, right? Mm. So I'll touch base with you. I'll offer you my products and services, but excuse me. The key to this is to make sure that what I'm actually do a bit of homework. Make sure that what I'm offering you is something that you use or is something of value to you. Because if I'm selling you nuts and bolts and you don't really buy nuts and bolts, I'm wasting my time and yours, right? So before you touch base, find out what the company does. Like in my instance, for example, does Mark hire plant? Does he hire lorries? Now, maybe he doesn't hire lorries, but he does hire plant. Right, okay. So now I know on my first initial contact with you, I'm just going to keep it even shorter because I'm now just talking about plant, not plant and lorries, yeah? So once I email you about the plant, maybe call you about the plant or whatever, you got to remember that I now know that you use plant. The fact that you use me is fine, right? I'm going to be here in the shadows, no pressure selling. I'm going to be here in the shadows for when perhaps you do want to use me, or maybe I can help you out of a hole and prove myself in that way. So it's really important that you're absolutely right. You keep in contact and you don't pressurise it. If you pressurise it, you piss someone off and then they won't use you at all.
I do agree with one of the parts you said there. I mean, the amount of times I get approached, especially on LinkedIn. I'm not banging on about LinkedIn, but do you know what? We had a bit of a rant about that the other week, and all I've seen is some high-level celebrities out there at the moment promoting LinkedIn for business. But people need to learn how to do business exactly like that, don't they? The amount of people that approach me for stuff that I don't do, or I did way back, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, the amount of agencies you see as well on there that are promoting jobs, and you think, well, I know more. I know the people that they know, and they're still not going back to the. It's like they're wasting time. They're always trying to fish, aren't they? Everyone's trying to fish for something. Like you said, send out a multiple email or multiple text to somebody and say, look, you know, we're selling beach balls. Are you interested? And you're like, well, 1 out of 1 million might want the beach balls, and they've hit gold. But it's such a shit way of doing it, isn't it?
But that's where I think sales has gone off on and it tars the rest of us with a bad brush, because I think if you want to do sales properly, the first thing you do is you do your homework. You find out a list of companies that you would like to trade with. Of those companies, how many of them use or potentially use our products and services? And then you refine that down further. So of those companies that use your products and services, do they use all or some of them, right? Now you've got a much more personalised, tailor approach. And that means that you'll get, those stats that you gave me are probably across the board. My stats would be a lot higher because mine is a much more personalised engagement. I can reference your company, I can reference you, I can reference some sites that you've got, I can reference some equipment that you've got on those sites, and I can then reference some of the products and services that I've got. So it's a much more tailored approach. And that's where I think people go wrong, is they go round, and as you quite rightly called it, fishing. Have some of this, have some of that, have some of that. You're kicking tires.
But there's no what you've said, Dixon's mentality of training, is there?
No.
For salespeople. It's like, oh, he can talk a bit, stick him out on the road. Or people think, oh, I fancy being in sales. But they don't really get, it looks like companies don't really do that anymore, like the in-depth. And lots of companies, especially retail businesses, used to do that way back. And hire companies. I mean, you wouldn't have gone out on your own for the first month at least, would you? You'd been with someone like face to face, and you would have seen their techniques and all that, especially if you were starting off in the game.
Yeah, I mean,
so it takes me on to, I just wanted to ask you this before we moved on, but so it's a tricky question really, but what's the best sales approach you've seen recently or before that's really impressed you? And it's either from a team member or someone's trying to sell you something.
What's the best sales approach?
Yeah, what's the difference? So if we're going to give someone, say, this was really got me and it was a great approach.
Do you know, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is, because it still makes me laugh today, right?
Yeah.
So I knew a guy and he was absolutely gagged to deal with a certain company, and I mean desperate, right?
Yeah.
And he'd done the email that we spoke about, and he'd made the call, and he'd gone to sites, and he just couldn't get anywhere, right? So anyway, when he told me this, it absolutely cracked me up, right? He sent an envelope to that company with a Post-it note, right? And in that envelope was a key ring of a shoe, and on the Post-it note it said, "I'm still trying to get my foot in the door." And I just thought that was so. He said that the client he now trades with, by the way, found that so amusing that it was just a shoe key ring, and a Post-it note. It wasn't. There was no big letter or anything like that. He said, "To Bob, still trying to get my foot in the door from Dave, you know, at wherever he's from," and he said it cracked the customer up so much that he picked up the phone and said, "What's this all about?" You know, it was well funny, you know. And he said they that instantly give them something to laugh about. They got on. Then the client tried him out, and now they trade. And I just thought that is sometimes just thinking of something funny outside the box.
Yeah.
It can
don't hurt, does it? Because the guy's not seeing you anyway.
Yeah.
So if he threw it in the bin, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
He's worked the opposite way. So yeah, that's
whether that's the best or not. But in my mind, of all the tactics and of all the skills and of all the things that we could drill down into, that was the most simplest. And that's sometimes where we go wrong. We overanalyze how can I deal with Mark? How can I do it? That was when I think about it now, the guy bought a key ring, probably $2.99, right? Yeah, you could, and a pack of Post-it notes, of which he used one, right, and a stamp and an envelope. And I think of all the out-the-box ideas to make someone smile.
Yeah.
Because that goes back to what we were speaking about earlier, Mark. It's about relationships, isn't it?
Well, I had one that was and it did catch us a little bit, and it was good that it's caught us because we weren't thinking, when you're not thinking, you think it, and it was a Post-it note thing as similar to that. And for some reason, everyone knew that we were trying to procure hire software. And in them, a few years ago, there was quite a few, wasn't there? Syrinx and Inspire and MCS and all these products that are out there. So yeah, go shout out to all them if they want to come on and give us a sponsor,
Yeah.
And what happened there was we got a flyer through the door with one of these, but I won't mention the company, but a particular software, just like a giveaway flyer, and someone had written on a Post-it note, "How you doing, Mark? Saw this and thought of you."
Oh, right, yeah.
John. Oh, I know loads of Johns, don't I?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's nice of John to send me that through the post. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he thought, I'll have a look at that. And that was a software that we hadn't noticed. So, and in the end, I think that was one of the fourth runners. And but it was just of course, that was just from the salesman. He didn't know, he just knew my name and he made it personal, and he had never had the opportunity to get in and see us. We'd probably bounced him back a few times and we weren't even considering their product.
Yeah.
So I think those little things that just catch you out, they're interesting for the people that are in sales. What do you do differently, in other words? You've got to do something slightly different, haven't you?
Yeah, I think when you go to work in the morning as a salesman, I think sometimes you can see your role as parallel lines, yeah? If you're in operations, that's the procedure for this, that's the procedure for that. I think the challenge with sales is there isn't a procedure because I'm dealing with individuals. I'm dealing with individual people that work in individual different ways. And I think you have to think outside the box. If I only ever email you or I only ever call you, it's so procedural, isn't it? It's so, but the joke of it is, some of my customers I've met, like you, in queues at networking events, right? So that's not procedural. I bumped into you at a network event. We had the crack, blah blah blah. That's what it's about. It's about talking to people. It's about marrying up. What I'm offering needs to be good for you.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, so let's get on to the bad part then. Setbacks. Let's say, so if your deal's stalled or you're on a bad run, what mindset or habits do you turn to? Do you like and for your team as well? Do you get into coaching with your team more? What about your own mentality? How do you get through that?
It's a great question, Mark. And sometimes the negative side of sales, can have a big impact on you. I learned that back when I was in my 20s, because obviously I was green and I was doing some good stuff, but I wasn't. There was things I didn't know that I should be doing as well. So in answer to your question, yes, I do coaching. It's really important, and I think you have to remember sometimes that it's like what we touched on before. I'm offering you a product, and my job, if you like, is to get you to see the value that I can offer you and your site, right? But if you as a buyer have got different ideas, or my price doesn't work, or my service doesn't work, or something I'm offering doesn't quite match your fit, then you might place the order elsewhere. Now, that as a salesperson, that losing orders is one of the most negative things. Or not being able to speak to someone, or not getting a fair chance is another one.
Yeah, I done some coaching the other week, and I said to the team, what's the win ratio of this? And they told me it was like 10%. Is their win? It was their win ratio. It was about 12, but let's say for the maths, it was. I said to it. So technically, you always are losing 90% of what you're after. So when you turn that from a negative to a positive. You know, no matter how you try, you can get better at that, by the way, but at the moment, you're winning 10%. So if you're winning 10%, you need 100 quotes. You need 1,000 calls.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah.
So if you're doing those figures and you're working hard at that, and, you know, you're gonna, out of 1,000 calls now, only get through to 100 people that are interested in meeting you to be able to do those 100 quotes. So the failure rate is not a failure rate as such, is it? It was always looked at failure, isn't it? But it's not. It's a process you have to go through to win.
Yeah, of course it is. And sometimes you got to remember the reality is that different companies, so this applies to different people in different industries as well, different companies offer different things. The service is slightly different and the prices are slightly different. So what you've got to remember is if you've got a high failure rate, as we'll call it for the minute, if you've got a high loss rate or failure rate, it's not necessarily, there's a number of aspects. It's not necessarily lost. It might be that either your service or your product or your price doesn't marry with the customer's requirements. So then you've got to ask yourself, if I lost a deal, let's say you and I done a deal, Mark, and I've lost the deal, it's very easy to say, oh, I must have lost it on price, right? And it's easy to blame the price. The salesman will blame the ops a lot of the time. Oh, it's the price. If we was cheaper, we would have got it, right? But the reality is it because not that I misunderstood what you needed or you misunderstood what I'm offering, but is there something we've missed slightly, right? Because, and this is where if I'm selling to you, I need to get all the ducks in a line, right? Hi, Mark, I can offer you this. This is the price. It does this for you. It does that. We can do this and we can do that. You're covered here. Your warranty's there, blah, blah, blah. And really it's covering the whole baseline, right? If I just send you a quote and go, hello, Mark, you want 10 of them? There's the price. Then I wonder why I lost it.
But you're absolutely right. I'll give you an example of literally 2 weeks ago. So you're dealing on construction. If anyone's dealing in construction sales, which is what really we do, you know, there's so many people in that chain, from the main contractor all the way down to the various subcontractors. So the you've got the main contractor, then you've got the framework contractor, and then you've got the window and then people come in at different levels, don't they? And it's a whole new team, and they've got different subcontractors. And we lost a deal recently because there was someone else in that chain that we didn't know about, and they were going in a different direction, a different product, but they were doing the work. But everyone above them, the main contractor, the subcontractor, the main contractor who then subbed it out to them, we think we're dealing with them, we're going to win the work. They're impressed with our product. But that's not the case. So some of the detail there, you're right, it's finding out that everybody that's in that decision-making chain. So if we're talking about failure, you know, or lost deals, which we're all going to come up against as any salesperson, you know, what deal in particular, is there one that stands out that you lost that taught you the most? And what did it teach you?
I'm trying to think now of all the deals we've done over the years.
Is there anything that really might have, well, Jesus, I didn't see that coming, or I'm going to learn from that? And, you know, it could be something small.
I think going back many years, and you've hit the nail on the head with what you said just there. You can, okay. So I think sometimes, and this is a fault we've all done, and I'll still make this mistake, is you think you're dealing with a decision maker, right? And you've hit the nail on the head. I've lost deals because, as far as I'm concerned, we've done a deal, right? But it turns out that someone down there wants something slightly different. Now, whether that's a slight variation on machine, which I've got, by the way, that's why it was annoying, because you've asked me for a 20 tonner, for example, but this guy wants to do it with a 13. And these two are having a row, but he's going to get a quote from me for a 13.
Yeah.
But someone else doesn't really talk to this guy, but he's dealing with him, and he's quoted him directly for a 13. So he's gone, I want that. But I've done all the groundwork thinking that's what we were talking about on a 20, for example.
Yeah.
And that's not what was...
It's understanding your customer, isn't it, as well? It's understanding who's in the chain of the customer. I always remember as a young rep going, Balfour Beatty's my account. But when you actually look at Balfour Beatty's, you're thinking, who do you know in Balfour Beatty's? And it's probably a small 10% of their overall opportunity because they've got a rail division, they've got a motorway division, they've got a civil, they've got all these divisions.
Massive, yeah.
And you think, that's my account, but you realise that you're doing like really well. You're doing £1 million a year with them, but they probably spend, 200 million on plant and equipment.
Yeah.
And you don't realise that. It's getting the detail. And that goes on to me about I've always said to you about the account manager is the sales guys. The big mistake I think the companies allow salespeople to do is just have that one point of contact. So you're the salesperson and I'm the procurement person, and we've got that contact. So as soon as I leave, you haven't got that connection anymore. That's a danger. But when you leave that company that you're working for, they haven't got that connection with me anymore.
Absolutely.
And it's trying to get that fed in where companies, my advice to companies would be, if you've got a big client, you make sure that everybody lines up with everyone. You've got your credit controller knows the credit controller. You've got the managing director knows their managing director. Your sales guy knows that, you're still dealing day to day with that account. That person has to deal day to day with that account, but everyone needs to be lined up. The hire controllers, the amount of plant reps, especially for some reason, it seems to be in this way that are still out there taking orders from customers on a day-to-day basis, when that could have been directed straight to the hire controller. The relationship's better that way because he's the one who's going to have to deal with the shit when it hits the fan and everything else like that. And you're now not distance yourself from the client, but you're giving yourself the opportunity to find other clients and to work differently maybe with that client rather than the day-to-day just taking an order for a 20-ton machine. Or what a lot of tool hire reps are, and it's like, it's my customer, let it go. Anyway, we're going off piste a little bit. So as a top performing salesperson, as we know you are, what do you do differently today than you did even 5 years ago?
Do you know what one word, strategy.
Okay.
And that's a really big thing. And we haven't mentioned it actually up to now in this podcast, but before you do your homework, so this is the first thing you do, you've got to understand your strategy. Now, your strategy can and should change as well, by the way, when things like COVID happen or something like that, yeah? But you should have a strategy which aligns with the business goals, right? So if you're working for a company, for example, and they would like to get some larger customers on board or some medium customers, or maybe they've forgotten over the years the smaller companies. We want to get the smaller companies on board because we're dealing with the larger ones. Strategy is a really big thing because strategy then leads you to everything else you need to do. If you know, for example, let's say you and I have got a business and we're only dealing with small companies. So medium size, which I call tier 2, and large size companies, which I call tier 1, are much needed in our portfolio, right? It helps iron out the peaks and the troughs, gives us a bit of stability in our turnover, yeah? So my strategy will then guide me to what companies are tier 2 companies in, what companies are tier 1 companies. Okay, I'm going to approach these companies. Let's find out a little more about them. Do they use our products and services? Oh, yeah, they do. What regions do they use them in? What typically do they do? And the strategy is so important, really important. And that is a key thing that I've learned through just being on the road for years and years and years. If I'm open and honest, no one told me about strategy when I was in my 20s and I first started doing it. Really, I had a set of keys and a pen and paper, and you go out and get orders. But what was the strategy?
Because there's a long-term strategy game plan, isn't there? There's a short-term. You need those orders here and there from different people. You need that volume, but you also there's a long-term trying to get into that major contractor is not that easy, is it? Because you've got to go through lots of hoops. You've got to have certain accreditation, which is a minefield nowadays, what types of accreditation, which is one, maybe that's something I'll have a rant about on the next one about what's doing me head in because, I remember they were bringing in different accreditations that would have covered everything. So you'd be one accreditation that ticked a box if you had the 9,000, the 14,000, everything else, but you just was on one portal and that was it. And
Job
everyone
done.
said, "Oh yeah, job done." But it's all over the place now. Anyway, so is there a daily or weekly habit then you would recommend to stay sharp, motivated, ahead of the game? Is there anything you do that realigns you, resets you after the weekend or something like that, or every day? Because it's quite for those, I know you've done a bit, you do a bit of both. You still go out there and meet the customer, but you've also got teams of people you've worked with you in the past that you've had to manage. So it's a different thing. But as a young salesperson, what we're talking about mainly on the road here, how do you keep?
I call it track and review is what I call it. So what's really important of all the things we spoke about today, what's really important is that you track, and this could be just through some basic notes. You haven't got to necessarily write War and Peace. It's all, you got to think about your time should be spent in front of customers or talking to customers. So the more time you spend doing admin, you're not out there, you're not selling. So if you track who you're speaking to, take the strategy we spoke about. There's your strategy. That's how I'm going to deliver my strategy, through speaking to these clients I'm chasing or potential clients. Now I'm going to track and then review. So on a Monday, for example, I track where I am, right? I track that last week I did this, and this, and I need to now do that, and that. Then at the end of the week, I review. How far did I get with the goals that I had at the beginning of this week? I said I was going to do these things. Did I do those things? It's no problem if you didn't. And this is where salesmen sometimes have a tendency to punish themselves and beat themselves up or get down. It's okay that you didn't meet all of your goals. That's okay. Just make sure you track that, review it, and move it forward to next week. So if I said I was going to ring you this week, Mark, and I haven't rang you, being in sales is probably a good reason why I've been talking to everyone else and trying to do other stuff. But I'm going to make sure I ring you next week. And by tracking and reviewing, I know that I didn't ring you last week. So I definitely must make that a priority this week.
Okay. So if you were starting your sales career again today, what would you focus on first?
If I was starting my sales career today.
Yeah. Knowing what you know.
Knowing what I know.
What would you focus on first?
I would advise anybody just starting out to hit up the low-hanging fruit, right? Because it's instant orders, right? It's go for people you know, if you know them.
Yeah.
Go for companies that are local to you, sites that are local. If we're talking about construction, go try and keep your geography tight, and just saturate that area. And go for the easy wins. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because that makes me laugh about the way companies set up sometimes. And they say, yeah, there you go, Mark. You've got the Southeast. That's what you're responsible for, the Southeast. And you're like, well, London's a different economy than the rest of the country anyway. So how can you get to around that amount of people? And I'm glad you said that, because I've said that often before, Can we stop worrying about winning something in Norfolk? Can't we win something like 10 miles from where we are? Can't we draw a radius of where we are and become the experts in that area?
Yeah.
And if that means that your like demographic of kind of customer base changes slightly, dealing with the nationals is one thing, but the amount of regional companies that deal with nationals and therefore get overstretched is sometimes you're better off dealing with the local companies around there and giving them a really good service, aren't you?
Absolutely.
And a cheap transport rate and everything else. But the amount of people that just look at that southeast, for example, or the northeast or whatever, and that map, and they go, okay, yeah, I've got a customer, I'll go and see them, rather than, who do I actually own? And we done this in Skips many years ago. Obviously, Skips is all dependent on the more profit you're going to make is, I'm going to make more profit delivering a skip over the road, aren't I, than 30 miles down the road.
That's why it's dead haulage.
Yeah. So it's like, shouldn't we just be brilliant and win everything in that area? And that's what I would go on to say to people, that, what you've just said, in an area, keep your geography quite tight and win everything in that area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do whatever you can.
Then you could, as things improve, you've got to remember that in that tight geography, your profitability is going to be good and your service is going to be great, because if someone has a problem or they want a lastminute.com, you've only got 3 miles to drive. Now, as your turnover and your profit build, you can then go outward from there, but it's important the infrastructure goes in, fitters, stuff like that.
Well, so I've been listening to a lot of podcasts myself, I quite enjoy some of the Stephen Bartlett Diary of a CEO podcast. I kind of like some of them about the AI. I'm a bit fascinated with AI. We've touched about it on AI now. I've even introduced some AI into our own business where we're going to be taking some of that noise away, that cold calling or reaction, or as soon as someone's made an inquiry, we can be talking to them and filtering, asking the right questions and stuff like that. So with the AI tools rapidly evolving, how do you see your role as a sales director changing over the next few years? Do you feel that, what happens if you don't change?
I don't think it will change that much. I think with sales, you'll always need to be customer facing. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. So my second question, so we'll put them both questions into one, because I was going to say, do you think that there will still be a place for face-to-face selling with AI?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I think what you got to remember is it's almost like parking sensors on a car. Yeah, parking sensors on a car doesn't mean you're not going to drive into anything. It means you've got a tool, an aid to stop you driving into something or to give you prior warning. And I think AI used properly in sales could give you a lot of data, a lot of forecast, a lot of information to help you do your job more efficiently. I think AI won't replace sales guys, not all the while I'm alive anyway, because I think certainly in our industry, the things that our customers are trying to do are completely different. One site is trying to achieve a bulk dig. Another site's trying to do some demolition. Another site's trying to just clear an area and break out some concrete. So the customers want to talk to me about, this is what I'm thinking of doing on this site. This is what I'm thinking of doing on that site. If you was to AI that in some way, you'd.
It is interesting because they say this is the biggest revolution that we've seen since the Industrial Revolution. And in actual fact, so the stats going back years and years and years that 80% of males way back, we're talking medieval or whatever, into Victorian, before the Industrial Revolution, worked on farms, manual labour. That was it. And they say as soon as the combine, the tractor came along, you didn't need 100 people in the field. Overnight, you only needed 2. And the adaptability there was okay because farm workers adapted very well into the factory process. Similar manual labour, it was very manual in them days, and so that it adapted quite well to the world. But they're saying now that certain jobs are just not going to be available, it's interesting to see your thought, you just said about with sales. But we know that legal assistants, you ain't going to need a legal assistant anymore, are you? You're not going to need certain roles in administration in the next 5 years. The world leaders are panicking to see where everyone is going to go.
Yeah,
because you can't turn around and say to all these people that are working in factories now or doing legal, or become an AI expert. There's only a certain amount of roles for that. In actual fact, one of the biggest AI companies, OpenAI, I think he's set his limit at the moment. They only employ 100 people for a multi-billion-dollar business. And they don't see that they'll be expanding any more of that because what they can use is all the work being done by AI. So you don't think any part of sales will be taken over by AI? And if you do you think that what would be good to automate and what?
Yeah, I think look, I think as technology improves, I think people will try and automate the sales process as much as possible, and that will speed things up for the customer. But I think
you still got to have that closer, haven't you?
Yeah, I think that I'll tell you what it is. The challenge we've got with our industry is that it's so individual, right? If you ask me for an excavator, for example, I'm just using that as an example. You know, do you want bladed buckets or tooth? So you tell me you want bladed, right? Okay, that's fine, right? But oh, actually, mate, can I have the digging bucket toothed? Oh, okay, right, we'll do that.
But can't you do that with AI? So I can set that up. I could, you know, you make an email to me like you think you're talking to me. There's AI like that at the moment, and I've trained it, and it says, "Oh yeah, hi Mark," and I'm going, "How you doing, Mark?" You know, and he goes, "Well, I'll need a 20-tonner. This is the range of buckets I need, blah blah blah. But I need a digger. I need this with teeth." And I'd go, "Yeah, no problem. I can get that sorted out." And it's doing it in the background, isn't it?
It potentially, but the scenario I'm thinking of, which happened to me yesterday, was a customer on hands-free driving back from a site, knew he could ring me on the way to his office, and he knew he could order that on the way back to the office. Now, in order for that to be automated, he would have to be at his office on the screen, selecting, I'll have this bucket, that bucket, or maybe even talking into a device. But he wouldn't necessarily be able to do that in a car driving, you know, while on hands-free. And this, I suppose, you've got professionals.
Well, I'd have to push that back on that. I'd have to say,
well, you don't agree with that, no?
I think you can. I think because AI is all about voice recognition. It's all about taking voice into text and then deciphering that text into actions. So yeah, I could ring up a Speedy Eye, and it could be open up an AI bot. It says, "How you doing?" Yep. Okay, see you ringing from your. How you doing, Mark? Even better because I know your number. You know, what can I help you with? And we've played with AI on the podcast, so we know how effective it can be as if it's you talking to me. So you know, I'm saying, oh, you know, no problem. You know, I'm looking for a couple of drills and a 20-ton excavator. It's got to have that. This. It's probably more efficient. It's taking it down more efficiently than telling someone who then turns up and sends you a 13-ton excavator, but because they haven't listened.
It's the customised site requirements that make it still need to be personal. And I'll give you an example, right? So customer orders a 13-tonner for Greenwich. Okay, you can do a 13-tonner for Greenwich, right? He says, you can't have a low loader, mate. Oh, right, okay. So kind of, all right, I'll put it on a rigid for you. Yeah, all right, on a rigid, yeah. There's a specific route you got to take. There's a site route so you don't come through the housing estate.
Yeah, but then right. I push back that again, Mark, because that's simple for an AI to work that out.
But you're assuming that the person speaking to the AI has, at that point in time, thought of everything.
Yeah, but that's what you train it to do.
Otherwise, you end up like McDonald's. You ever tried to say at McDonald's? The amount of questions. Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want the other? Do you want to donate to charity? Do you want this? Do you want to eat in? Do you want to take? And so then you have to have all the questions have to be asked to the guy, which then piss the guy off. But when you're actually having a verbal conversation with another human being, you can converse all of this.
Someone told me, and maybe this is my advice to everybody about AI, and I heard it on a couple of things. AI won't take your job. It's the person that knows AI will take your job. So anyone out there, before we get onto a debate, because I'm going to close off now about AI, but yeah, I'd say to any people out there, I think it's a whole different podcast, but I think there is an issue coming with AI and sales, personally.
Right, we'll do it.
Because going back to what you started about, is the new generation coming through, do they care about meeting down the pub? I mean, we've all got diabetes and heart problems in our industry because we spent our lives going out after work, meeting customers for a pint, for a curry, for whatever. On a Saturday, I was the other day in London meeting a customer because that's what you do, didn't you? But they're of that generation that they like that touchy-feely, that kind of thing. You know, and it was convenient. I'm coming in to London on a Saturday. That's the only time I can see you. You know, I'm flying in. Okay, I'll fucking meet you. You know, I'll be down there. But I just don't know how much of that noise stuff, of that build-up of getting to that face-to-face is going to be taken away by that initial thing. And maybe we should all be looking at that and becoming the pioneers of that, rather than saying it's never going to happen. Because if someone makes it happen, then we're not in work, are we? That's my thing, my opinion on it. But just going back, just to close off, because it's been fascinating listening to what you've got to say, and hopefully some salespeople out there, young salespeople, and I'm sure if they get hold of you on LinkedIn, if they want any advice, you're one of them guys that gives plenty of advice out to people.
Anytime,
and mentor stuff. So what is the one piece of advice you wish someone had told you earlier in your career? That would have saved you. Probably about 10 years
made
of learning.
made my life a load easier. I wish I was guided through the difference between going for new customers and canvassing existing customers for more.
Yeah.
I feel like I could have saved years and years and years there's so much stuff that I'm self-taught, but I really wish someone had told me that. And I'd now tell my guys what I've learned over the years. I think the key bit of advice, to answer to your question, to actually focus down on that, the key bit of advice I'd have for anybody is to be natural, be yourself, and ask questions.
Yeah.
And
listen.
And listen, yeah.
Listen, yeah. Listen. But yeah, squeezing the orange, as they say, getting more out of that customer, because I can guarantee you everyone in construction who's in construction sales thinks that they've got a great customer spending a lot of money, but I bet you they spread the load, these buyers. And it's just about how to get more of that out of them, isn't it? And being closer to them to work out how that is, and being, as you say, being more of a problem provider, solution, rather than a sales, buy my product.
Yeah.
How do I solve that problem? The old 2 ears, 1 mouth kind of thing, sitting in front of people, listening to what they've got to say, what their problems are. Many salespeople that sit down in front of you now that I see, they're straight at it, aren't they? Well, this is what I've got. This is my product. It's fantastic. It's better than theirs. And you're thinking you haven't even listened to what I actually need.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's a good advice. Yeah, listening more. But great to have this kind of thing. We'll crack on with our next week with who we got on next week, Mark?
Darren. We got Darren on next week, so we'll keen to get that on the go.
So we're back onto a little bit of about
charity and mental health and stuff like
bits
that.
And
yeah,
pieces like that. We'll be cracking on with that and having a laugh, and no doubt, hopefully, you'll have a bit more of a rant about something rather than like GDPR and cookies and things like that.
Look, listen, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people that are going to hit reply to this thing in a minute and put comments on saying, yeah, it does my head in at all. In fact, what's really funny is I wonder if they've had to press something to listen to this.
They would have done. But talking about listening to things, that post on LinkedIn the other day, that was funny. There was a woman on LinkedIn, I don't know if anyone listens to this podcast, Mark had a rant about his washing machine lying to him. And it seems to be there's a bit of a thing, Mark.
I told you.
There was a woman on there on LinkedIn the other day, and we tagged her in, and she said, why is it my washing machine lying to me? Does everyone else have this problem? It said it had a minute to go. I was waiting to go out. It was 20 minutes later. I was still standing there. So, when we all thought you were going absolutely back shit crazy, Mark, it turns out you're not. It seems like that Mr. Hoover or Mr. Zanussi need to come on and explain, why
what's going on.
They're lying to us with their minute clock.
And that's the thing. It's like I still do it now. In fact, now I've actually got that to that point where the washing machine said it's got 2 minutes, and I just think it's almost like traffic on M25. I think half hour.
Anyway, lovely. That's it then. Good episode, Mark. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.